So I know your first question is life really better here than it is back in Micronesia? I think you have to subcategorize that Micronesia is just not one island.
Just to make sure that you guys know that Micronesia is not one country, it's different islands. They have different government, they speak different language. For example, Asia is China, Japan, Korea. They all speak different language. They have different cultures. It's kind of the same dynamic. So when you say, do you speak Micronesian? It doesn't make sense. Also doesn't make sense when you say, do you speak Asian? Because it doesn't make sense. But I understand people just want to say that because Micronesia is not a lot of people understand how the island is, taught. So it's something that more people, they become aware of what the cultures and the different islands, then you'll understand.
Me, I'm from Palau, but I was raised here as a child growing up. So based on the differences between what's here and what's there and what's better, I think there's good here and there's also bad here. There's good there and there's also bad there. In terms of what if it is it better, I think it's give and take. It depends what you want.
But as far as it, better or whatnot, it's a hard call to say because when I was in Palau, it wasn't like I was struggling to eat or anything like that. We live a pretty good life in Palau. It's not like, you're scraping for food or not like it's a desert or anything, so I wasn't struggling in any part of the life that I was living in Palau or I'm here. For me, it's kind of the same.
For me, I think as older as I get, this is just my personal opinion, the older I get, I think there's a lot more that I appreciate being an islander because that's what I miss. Because it's not the lifestyle, I think it's the culture and the traditions that you have that's good, that's still there, that still exists. Those things are important, I think. That's really tells you who you are, right? So in terms of what's good here and what's bad there or what's good there and what's bad here, I think that's a good thing about the island is that you can always take the boy out of the island, but you can never take the island out of the boy. I think that's one thing that I've learned growing up. I think that's very true. It's okay to have that, but you can't really practice that culture because you're not there. But at the same time, you still hold those values, which is good. But on top of that, you also Americanize like I am. I'm still an islander at heart. But what's good here is that it doesn't give you opportunities. I think it gives you a solid footstep into what you want in your life. Because everything is based on, I wouldn't call it Americanized, but I think it's based on giving you an opportunity to grow, see where you want to be, what you want to be. And you have other opportunities because it's a bigger place. And of course, the opportunities are bigger. In a small island, of course, you have the same thing, but your opportunities is not as big because it's a smaller. And I think that's the difference between that and this. So Hawaii is, I think it gives you opportunities. You can explore them, you can see them. But for the island, you can see those things, but it's limited. So to me, that's the difference. That's the big difference. Is it better? Like I said before, I think it's a matter of give and take. It depends how you look at it because I really appreciate the culture and the traditions. To me, Hawaii doesn't have that unless if you're a Hawaiian and you practice all of that culture and that traditions. So I think that's the difference.
The United States during World War II used one of the outer islands of Marshall Islands called Bikini Atoll to test the atomic bomb. That's all they did. So it's one small island in the Marshall Islands that they used to test the atomic bomb. The other islands were not affected by that bomb, so they didn't bomb Micronesia as a whole, but one specific small island of Marshalls. So Palau didn't get affected.
I'm not from there, so I don't know. Did it have an effect on us? I think it had an effect on that part of the world, that region. I think it had an effect on how people would have to sustain themselves? How do you move? How do you move forward after that? I don't know. To me, if it was me and I came from that particular place, I think it'd be hard, because I would probably have a hard time trying to sustain myself, because my health could be unhealthy, and at the same time probably not. If you think about it, I think it's compromised. So I don't think I'll be able to get all the things that I need and want to sustain myself and my family. So if the United States did something in terms of that, which they did, promises were made, I think. This is just my personal opinion. I think promises were made, but I don't know if those promises were ever, if you made a promise, you need to do it and you need to play it forward. I did this, I did that, so I'm going to give you this to supplement that. I don't think the U.S. really did that. That's just my personal views. But since I'm not from that part of the South Pacific, I don't know how it is. But I'm sure it had an effect in that particular trust territory, the Pacific Islands back in the day. That I don't know, but I have a feeling it did. So I can't really answer that question in terms of did it have an effect on the islands that we were in. I think somewhat I think it did, and I think that's why they came up with the Free Compact of the Association, the COFA. Every territory had their COFA agreement, and I'm not into politics, so I don't know what really entails in terms of that. But I think that probably had a bigger role that they played in terms of what they were promised and what they didn't do and what's still going on and what they're able to do now. I think that had a bigger effect on those terms and agreements, I think, when they did that. So I don't know. In terms of how our Micronesian culture being influenced by the American culture, I think the culture itself, it's an ever-changing entity. It keeps changing. So if it's changing, then is it changing for the better? I think as time goes by, we all have to change and have to adapt. The American culture that's here now will be here now, and I think it will be here later. But at the same time, even though you have that culture and there's new change, I think it doesn't change who you are as a person, where you're from and who you really are. I think there's a difference between people, is that a person should know who they are and what they are. And at the same time, your culture and your people or your community, I think if they're there and they're able to support you, I think the influence will be there, but it doesn't take over the traditions and the culture, if that makes any sense. So in terms of the culture itself, I think the culture will be there if you want to learn and absorb. As much as there's a lot of American influence, I think it's something that you can try to balance, because nowadays that's what you have to do. Move with the flow, so to speak. But for you to, adapt, I think that's probably something that you have to do to sustain and at the same time to learn. So the knowledge and the influence will always be there and it will never stop. So you got to keep learning to adapt. And at the same time, as long as you don't forget where you're from and what you are. That's something that, for me, that's what I carry within myself.
Huge. All the canned food, the sweets, the candies and whatnot. That's why a lot of people from Micronesia, they have a lot of people with diabetes and high cholesterol, all that other stuff. Our staple, fish, taro, fruits, yams, those are the food that we grew up eating. Now, when you introduce cereal, milk, bread, it's gonna affect you somehow. So it does affect us You can tell if you go to the islands and see how people are built. They're all bigger stature. I don't want to say fat, but that you can see it. It's, and I think everybody knows that. Even here, I work in the homeless arena where if you look at them, they also use food stamps, and that's what they eat, all the food that's not really good for you.
on what you're able to get and what you're able to afford. Can I live in Hawaii and have that island lifestyle? I can't, because it's expensive. It really depends on the individual, I think. If you look at it in a way that, what is your lifestyle? Are you a healthy person? Personal approach and a personal preference on how you want to be able to eat and stay healthy. I don't think it has influenced me in any way. But at the same time, it also depends on how you want to live your life and if you want to live healthy and stay healthy.
Well, for Palau, as far as when the Westerners or colonizers came to Palau, there were some few things that they introduced to us that I think was good for us. Medicine, education, just a broad knowledge, a lot of knowledge they brought in.
I'm just talking about Palau. I think Palau was colonized by the Spaniards, the Germans, the Japanese, and the Americans. So you got some people with a Spanish last name. You've got some people with German last name or raised German. And then you got some people who are Japanese last name or look Japanese because of the same decolonization. And of course, you got somebody who is an American, kind of like me, who was raised Caucasian and whose mother is Caucasian. So if you look at it, I think everybody's different. For me, I haven't seen it, but what I've learned is that people have changed because of religion and culture. And has the other culture have, of course, I think that's why Hawaii is a chop suey state. It's mixed because there's a lot of influences from all kinds of people. And then you put into one single pot. It's the same thing for the islands.
You can kind of juggle what you want and what you need, what you don't want. But the main thing is we did not invite anybody to our island. There was no formal invitation. People came in and kind of just took over. But, I see it as right now, it's a two-way street where people can cooperate because there's no turning back. People have to cooperate and kind of see what each side need and kind of work together to live together. That's all I can say.
We still have our culture intact. And I'm just talking about my father's side. So has that decolonization really made a big change? I think it has, because I think it made people aware.
So it's important that your own country establish a boundary where you learn the Western ways, but also keep in touch with your roots. We assimilate, but we also make sure that we understand our values as Palauans. We have our people that teach our children. Education is very important and very vital.
I would say a lot of them are ELL or English language learners. They have a hard time with English reading and writing. A lot of the times I don't think they get the necessary support that they need. For example, there's not that many, if any, ELL classes available for high school. They also adjust to cultural differences, such as showing up to school on time, doing homework. A lot of times they don't have a foundation in the subject that they're trying to learn, such as math. I also don't think that they're supported at home. I don't think their families support their education adequately. I think it's a secondary concern. Talking to their parents, if they respond, a lot of them are too busy working 2 or 3 jobs. A lot of times the kids are left to their own devices, and most often a lot of them end up floundering in the system, either failing classes, having to repeat, or getting into trouble. First off, there's a language barrier. They don't understand what you're saying all the time. You have to change your vocabulary. A lot of times, if you have a lot of them in your class, a lot of times they don't show up to school, they don't do their homework. You have to adjust your class. Sometimes you have to make homework voluntary, or you just cut it out entirely. A lot of times you have to go back and reteach old material. Other times some are not as disciplined. It goes for many other students as well. Discipline's an issue, attendance is an issue, English language issues.
Education is, of course, is the biggest, because you educate people, you give them knowledge. You give them knowledge, they make change. And when they make change, they usually carry it on and being able to pass it on to the next generation. And they do it better and better and better as time goes by, because there has been changes. And to me, decolonization is not based on if the culture is going to change, people are going to change. Eventually, culture and people will change because time changes.
Thank you everybody for making it to the end of the video. I had a lot of fun doing this project. It was not necessarily easy. Filming, editing, finding the right footage is definitely very time consuming. For every minute you see in the video, it's probably take about 2.5 hours of work. So I don't recommend it if you're not really into this kind of stuff, like editing video and getting footage and all that. But for me, this is like a passion project, you know. This is a subject that I was really passionate about. So I choose this route because I know it would get a lot more engagement out of people. Instead of writing like a 20-page paper that no one probably gonna read beside the instructor. What I think about decolonization for the Micronesian, I don't think I can say it any better than the people in the video. We definitely need change, and change is coming whether you like it or not. There's no going back. We need to assimilate and move forward. You can't just be dwelling in the past. You know, what happened, and we just gotta have to move forward with it. Is it the right thing for us to do, just moving forward? I think it is, and in some way I think it isn't. You know, you can't really pick and choose what you want in life. You know, sometimes I think the culture of the colonizer actually become part of the indigenous culture, and then I don't know how we're gonna separate that. What does it mean to be Micronesian American? How do we separate that? You know, do you want to be Micronesian? Do you want to be American? Who are we to make people make choices like that? You know, the thing that's going on with Native Hawaiian American been here for over 100 years. How do you take what has been assimilated for over 100 years out and then only choose what you want to remain? You know, you can't pick and choose. You gotta take the bad with the good. They say, no going back, time to change, and only more changes will come in the future.